Well, the I-9 form was updated in March of 2013 and became mandatory for use in May of 2013. The significant changes to the form, number one, it's now a two-page form versus a one-page form. So we have section 1 that the employee completes on the first page, section 2 that the employer completes on the second page. Another significant change is that the employee now must have that form completed, section 1, no later than their first day of employment. So in the past, the employer and the employee had 3 business days to complete the entire form. Now the employee must have section 1 completed on or before their first day of employment. The employer still has up to 3 business days to complete section 2 and receive the identification and proof of eligibility to work documentation. Employers who don't complete the form on time, whether it's section 1, section 2, or both, are then likely to receive a fine from ICE if they are audited. One of the errors that we find very often with employers is that they will prepare an orientation checklist, for example, and part of that orientation checklist will say, please bring identification, for example, your driver's license and a social security card or a birth certificate. When we dig a little further, what the employer is really doing is instructing the employee what to bring to complete the I-9 form. That is a problem. If you look at the I-9 form, at the top of page 1, section 1, it specifically says that the employer cannot instruct the employee as to what documentation they will accept. Basically, that means that the employer can't require or suggest specific documentation from the employee for the I-9 form. The last page of the I-9 form, which I believe is page 9, has 3 lists in it, List A, List B, and List C. A document from List A will show both identity and eligibility to work in the United States. If the employee does not have or chooses to not bring a document from List A, then they can choose one document from List B, for example, their driver's license, which proves identity, and one document from List C, which would be a social security card or a U.S. birth certificate, which then shows their eligibility to work in the U.S. Well, I once had a client that said that they were going to be a patriotic employer and only hire U.S. citizens, and that's really not something that an employer can do. In fact, again, the instructions in the I-9 form say that an employer cannot discriminate against someone based on their citizenship or their eligibility. Another error that we run into with employers is that they accept copies of the documents from employees. So, for example, an employee will bring in a photocopy of their driver's license and their social security card. That is not acceptable, and in fact, it is a violation of the regulations. What that means to the employer is the individual who is accepting that documentation is not verifying the identity and right to work of that individual. They're relying on a copy that could be altered somehow. The individual who accepts those copies and then attests to the validity of the documents may be committing perjury because they're not examining the original documents to assure that they are original and are valid documents. The company is not responsible for that perjury. It's the individual who's accepting and attesting to the validity of the documents on Section 2.